So everybody, let's welcome Chadwick.
Thank you. So today I'm going to talk about the power of plants. Bear with me, I'll probably be going on script more than I would probably like, but that's the way it's going to be. So the power of plants, it all starts with a seed. Look at the person sitting next to you. Odds are, by the time you're 40, one of you will have or have had a mental illness. That's a pretty sad thought. One could get depressed just thinking about it. But seriously, depression and anxiety disorders that make up a lot of mental illnesses either directly or indirectly affect us all. In fact, I've struggled with depression for most of my life. I clearly remember lying in bed in high school thinking to myself, I should go downstairs, get some rope, go to the woods, and hang myself. Stuck in my head, on repeat, like some sort of twisted mantra, self-feeding my sadness. I don't know if it was the fear of the stigma or what it was, but I, like many others, didn't want to talk about it. So I got really good at hiding in plain sight. I built walls to hide how I was feeling on the inside. So today I'm going to continue my journey of breaking down those walls that I built so long ago and maintained so well. I'm on a journey of healing. I'm trying to mend my path and get back to better. So today I'm going to talk about my struggle with depression and how it was cured with plants. I'm going to talk about how that led to creating the Mended Paths Podcast and how that in turn led to running. As I've said, I had a mostly hidden struggle with depression during high school. When I left high school, I moved to Nova Scotia to attend Dalhousie University. I found that in hindsight, when I started something new, like attending a new school or starting a new job, I found momentary happiness. So the novelty of the new thing invigorated and excited me. However, it wasn't long before the freshness faded. The novelty, it's like my happiness battery was too small and that I wasn't good at conserving it. I'd start something new, get really excited about it, but it would quickly fizzle out and the depression would return. Then starts the destructive thoughts and actions. I would drink more to try to find an altered state of mind. Obviously, choosing a drug like alcohol is a poor choice looking back. I'd start sleeping more, which led to missing classes and failing grades, which feeds into the feelings of worthlessness. Negative thoughts would start small, but they would grow until they consumed me, and it was all I could think about whenever I was alone. I desperately wanted to break the cycle. I thought, a new environment, a new me. This isn't working, so the only way to fix it is to try something new. So I was off to Kingston, Ontario. The cycle continues. Excitement fades to sadness. Here, drinking was considered a sport, and I obviously wanted to be a professional. But again, alcohol is a depressive agent. It's a depressive drug. Someone who's depressed really should try to avoid the stuff. My attempts to change my mind, my state of mind, was ineffective. I began cutting myself. I told my therapist that I was doing it so that I could feel something, but I don't know why I did it. She prescribed antidepressants, and I self-medicated, and both failed. I had a few failed suicide attempts before I was off to Ottawa to mix, lather, and repeat. Excitement fades to sadness, goes to destructive thoughts and actions. Several moves later, from Ottawa to home, to Alberta, to PEI, to back to Alberta, and despite the change in location and the slight nuances, the cycle continued. I expected this to be my life. I remember commuting to and from work thinking I should just drive this car into the ravine. Oh no, that will mess up insurance and probably screw over my wife. Yes, let's just go to the woods and get some rope and follow that mantra again. Yet I'd end up in my garage drinking and smoking the day and my life away. I should point out that from the outside, I had no good reason to feel this way. I had a good job, it was well paying, a nice home, a wife who loved me and whom I loved, but still, I was sad. Still, I was unhappy. I didn't know why. The really sad part was I didn't expect it to change. And I just wanted to be done with it all. I'd given up trying to fix myself. I didn't expect to ever find a cure, and I was no longer looking for one. But I was set down a path to finding one quite unexpectedly. One day, some friends from out of town were visiting, and they had been juicing recently, and they said we should try it, and that they insisted that we watch a movie called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. We bought a juicer that very weekend, and we went out and we made some juice, and to our surprise, we liked it. But, okay, whatever, we'll juice sometimes, this isn't a life-changing event. But then when I was out of town, my wife finally got around to watching this movie, and she insisted that we needed to watch it. So we sat down and we watched it together. And wow, if you haven't seen the movie, it's about a man named Joe Cross who essentially goes on a 60-day fruit and vegetable juice fast. And so he only consumes fruit and vegetable juices for 60 days. In doing so, in that 60 days, he lost 80 pounds, and he stopped all symptoms of his autoimmune disease, which is deemed as incurable. Wait, what? He reversed his autoimmune disease by juicing? I was intrigued, and the unexpected journey began. My wife and I, we started juicing with gusto. We would twice a week make big batches of juice. And so we would have a fruit juice for breakfast and a mainly vegetable juice for lunch. But we continued to eat normal fare for suppers. And of course, we continued snacking on junk in the evenings and in the weekends. But our interest in nutrition was sparked. Dr. Furman helps Joe at the beginning of the movie, and we discovered that Dr. Furman has several books of his own. So it was through reading these books that we began to adapt our diets to be more plant-based in general. And so in general, I've found that the more I learned, the more I wanted to eat plants. If I read a book, I'd become very compliant. But as time went on, the freshness of the information would fade, old habits would creep back in, and I would find myself eating more animal products and more junk in general. But knowledge really is power. Watching a talk by Dr. McDougall or Dr. Furman or Dr. McDougall or Dr. Esselstyn or Dr. Greger, or watching a video like Forks Over Knives, and it would reinvigorate me and would shoot my compliance up again. So this pattern, it continued for quite some time, probably about 2 years. It wasn't until we found nutritionfacts.org that there was really a systemic shift in our behavior once more. So Dr. Greger, who runs nutritionfacts.org, he puts out these frequent videos on nutritional science. And so he does so by reading every article in every issue of every nutrition journal every year, all 100,000 of them. And so my wife and I got into the habit of watching these videos as we sat down and ate supper every day. And so this was a daily reminder of the power of plants, keeping the info fresh in my mind and therefore my compliance strong. I did see incremental benefits accrue. I lost some weight, and the symptoms of my irritable bowel syndrome, which I had all my life, lessened as well. The better we ate, the better we felt, but still, I was sad. My depression stayed. Now, I loved learning about nutrition. As much as I loved reading a book or watching a video about the health benefits, I for sure followed the moderation approach. So eating some animal products isn't that bad, I thought. look at how much better I'm doing now than I was doing before. It really wasn't until I saw more videos on the toxins and parasites that can be in animal products that I realized I couldn't eat those anymore. You mean to tell me there could be worms in pork that can travel out through your intestine, travel all throughout your body, and make little holes in your muscles and your brains and your organs? What? They've even been found swimming in people's eyes? Oh hell no, that is off the menu. The following short video is not for the squeamish. So this is a quick video that a doctor took. If you can see there, that's a tongue worm that has migrated to someone's eye and is swimming around in their eye. So once you get them, if you get these worms in your muscles and stuff, you can take a deworming agent to kill them and your body usually takes care of it. Get it in your eye and surgery is in your future. So with this I became 100% vegan, but not just vegan because I avoided vegan junk food as well. I became 100% whole food plant-based. And by doing so, I lost about 40 pounds up to this point. And by the time I was eating 100% whole plant foods, my IBS had completely resolved, so no more irritable bowel syndrome. But I was still sad, and I was living a contradiction. So I knew I ate very well. In fact, I ate better than most people ate. However, I wasn't healthy. I was still smoking and drinking every day. Why go through all the trouble of eating outside of the mainstream eating patterns if you're just going to poison yourself in some other way? So it had to stop. So on March 19th, 2016, I quit everything. I was already vegan, but I reaffirmed on that day that I was no longer going to willingly consume any animal products at all. I quit smoking and drinking. From then on, I was going to focus on nothing but healthy living. I lost 10 pounds more in a week or so after that. Holy, there are calories in beer. But what happened next was amazing. Like, I honestly can't say that on this day I was sad and then on this day I was happy. I can't pick a date. But eventually I realized that I hadn't thought about taking a walk in the woods or a trip to the ravine in quite some time. The slightest daily stressors were no longer destroying my day. I noticed I was happy more. Lo and behold, once I cleared the toxins from my diet and the poison from my life, I started to feel better. But it wasn't until I went 100% whole food plant-based that I got the results that I wasn't expecting but desperately needed. In the words of, I really don't believe in moderation. In the words of Dr. Greger, moderation is like choosing to hit yourself with a smaller hammer, but why hit yourself at all? If you give your body what it needs and only what it needs, it will give you what you need most, good health. I am so thankful for our friends that suggested we watch that first documentary. There's been so many since then. They unknowingly started me on a journey where I was able to mend my path, and I will forever be grateful for that. People need that start. Perhaps they'll jump right in and embrace whole foods, the lifestyle wholeheartedly. Perhaps people's transitions will be slower like mine was. Perhaps you'll only be successful in planting a seed and hoping that the conditions will be right for it to grow sometime in the future. The best we can do sometimes is plant that seed and hope. After my friends planted that seed in me with Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, part of my early motivations they came from books like Eat to Live by Dr. Joel Fuhrman. So the doctor has this habit of starting his chapters with testimonials of people who had adopted his nutritarian way of eating, and in doing so had achieved amazing results. Many people had reversed heart disease, they had eliminated diabetes, reduced or eliminated medications, lost weight, and overall just got healthy. And so I remember tearing up a little each time I would read these stories. I was overwhelmed by the success that these people had, that they had found all by eating plants. So like many others, once I found a healthy lifestyle with plants, I wanted to spread the message as far and as wide as possible. So motivated by Dr. Furman's testimonials, I decided to start the Mended Paths Podcast. So on the Mended Paths Podcast, as the title suggests, I interview people who have mended their own paths by adopting a whole food plant-based diet. So I hope to let others see the wonders that these people have achieved simply by changing what's on the end of their fork. And through their stories, I hope others find the motivation to start their own journeys back to better. I'd like to share some of the amazing stories that some of my guests have shared with me and my listeners. So first I want to talk about Dr. Brooke Goldner. So Dr. Goldner is a board-certified medical doctor and the best-selling author of a book called Goodbye Lupus. But before she was a doctor, she was a patient. At the age of 16, she was diagnosed with systemic lupus, and she was in stage 4 kidney failure. They put her on chemotherapy for 2 years to push it into remission. When she was in her 4th year of medical school, she suffered a severe relapse, including having a mini stroke. She was told she'd be lucky to be alive at age 50, and that if she tried to have kids, it would kill her. When she was to marry, she wanted to lose some weight and get in shape for her wedding. Lucky for her, her husband-to-be was a rapid body transformation specialist for celebrities on MTV. So he basically, despite usually including meat in his plans, he accommodated her vegetarianism, and effectively put her on a high, raw, whole food, plant-based diet. To make a long story short, not only did she lose weight and get in shape for her wedding, all the blood markers for lupus disappeared. That's unheard of. She kept up her whole food, plant-based ways, and the lupus hasn't come back. Not only this, despite what the doctors told her, she's now had 2 healthy children without complications. Her labs have all been completely normal now for 13 years, and all by changing what she ate. Next, I want to tell you about Josh Lajani. So Josh weighed over 400 pounds. He started his journey because he wanted to lose some weight, but also as a way to change things up to deal with some stressful periods in his life. By adopting a whole food plant-based diet, not only did he buck the social and cultural norms of his native Louisiana, lost over 200 pounds, and took control of his health, he also became an athlete. Josh is now without a doubt a runner. He competes in many races and even had a podium finish for a 100-mile race. He's even been featured on the cover of Runner's World magazine that you can see here. Next is water. Next is Dr. Ruth Heidrich. So Dr. Ruth was 47 when, despite being a marathoner and a daily runner for 14 years with what she considered to be a healthy diet, she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer that had spread to her lungs and her bones. So luckily, she was able to connect with Dr. John McDougall, who was doing an interventional study on the effects of diet on breast cancer in her area. Within weeks, she was seeing amazing results with the new low-fat vegan diet. In 2 weeks, her body had encapsulated the cancer that was in her breast. She wanted to prove that this diet, this lifestyle, was so powerful. Not only would she chew up and cure her cancer, she would spit out iron. So while she was still recovering from a mastectomy, she began training and went on to finish 6 Ironman triathlons. At the time, it was considered that you could only do 1 of these per year, given the amount of recovery that's needed from such a strenuous activity. She did 4 in her first year of competing. It should be noted here that plant-based athletes typically experience increased recovery time markedly compared to their meat-eating counterparts. Last, I want to tell you about Tim Kaufman. Tim has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder. He was told by his doctors to keep his body quiet. Bad choices and pain compounded his condition, leaving him sitting at over 400 pounds with a prescription drug addiction. When faced with a tragedy in his own life, he thought of his failing health and the pain it would inflict on his own wife, and that forced him to fight. Has anyone heard of the concept of Kaizen? No? So Kaizen is a Japanese process of continuous improvement, so incremental changes to improve and get better. And so Tim had implemented a policy of Kaizen in his own life. He wanted to do a little better, a little more each day. So he started with getting up out of a chair 2 times instead of once. Get up, sit back down, get up again. He eventually adopted a whole food, plant-based diet, and through it, he overcame his prescription drug addiction, lost 200 pounds, and became a new man. Now, the man who was told by doctors not to move his body, he runs, bikes, and races regularly. He just finished his first half Ironman. He's a far ways from a man who could only get up out of a chair twice. So I started to notice that many of my podcast guests, they were runners. Most were not originally runners, but the theme was that they ate better, they started to feel better, and then eventually their bodies told them, you need to move more. And a surprising number of them turned to running as an outlet. Now, I wasn't exactly new to running. I dabbled before. When I was in cadets, I had to run. I was slow and I hated it. When I joined the military, I injured my knee, and that made running suck even more. Somehow, despite this, I remember saying that I wanted to run a marathon. So I don't know why. And so I went online. There was a site called soyouwanna.com. It was a how-to site. And I found a plan on how to prep for running a marathon. And so I got it and I said, I'm going to do it. I think I lasted about 2 weeks before I deemed the whole thing just ridiculous. Running made my body hurt at 3 or 4 kilometers. What is 42 going to do? Even if I could do 42 kilometers, a full marathon, why would I want to? I wrote it off as a bad idea. I clearly wasn't a runner. He's having a tough time running too. So flash forward now 10 years later, and here I am. I have all these people telling me that they're running and that they're loving it. They gotta be crazy, right? But I'm finding I do have more energy. I'm thinking I need to do something with it. So I strap on a pair of running shoes and I go for a run. This is November 2016. And you know what? It felt good. I liked being outside. I could go farther than I thought I would be able to. My body wanted to move. I think I ran 5 kilometers on that first day. So shortly I went out and got a running app that would track my runs. My first recorded activity was over 16 kilometers, and I did 21 and a half a few days later. But by this point I was having some serious pain in my knee. So I decided that I needed to take rest, because I'm like, stupid knees. I finally enjoy running and my knees are letting me down. So I took a rest and I went to see a physiotherapist. And so you know what? Stretching is important. I wasn't doing any of that. So he gave me 5 stretches to do, and I had to do them twice a day, at least twice a day for 3 weeks. So I did that, and by the end of December, the pain was gone, and I had a new pair of running shoes. My old pair that I was running with was 5 years old, and it had about as much traction as a slip and slide and the cushioning of a 2x4, so it was time. Honestly, I was really impressed with how quickly I fell in love with running. I wanted to see how far I could go, so I did what any normal person would do. I found the longest race in my city, and I signed up. I wanted to see how far this protein-deficient body could go. It was now January, and the race was in 6 months, so I trained. Between January and the race, I ran 470 miles, but those miles couldn't do anything to prepare me for the race that I was going to run. I started with what started as a 150 kilometer Celebrate Canada kind of race turned into a true 100 miler, 162 kilometers by the time race day came. And on race day, it started raining early and it didn't stop. I ran for over 19 hours and 17 of those were in the rain. The course was nothing but mud and pain. I lost count of how many times I fell down. I was literally squatting down and sliding down hills, grabbing what trees or shrubs or bushes I could to stop my fall, and literally hands and knees crawling up them. At one point, there were sections where I shimmied across a washed out ridge where the trail no longer existed, grabbing on whatever chutes I could to avoid sliding the 30 feet down and into the river. A couple of people made it into the river. And I suffered. There were 16 of us that started that day, all experienced racers except myself. Only 6 of them finished. I made it 70 miles, the furthest of anyone who didn't finish, before the cold and pain stopped me. In hindsight, looking back, I should have just kept walking, but I thought I was going to do some permanent damage to my ankles. Blame it on inexperience. In 6 months, though, I had gone from not running to making it 70 miles, which is 112 kilometers, in under terrible race conditions. This is something that would have been literally impossible before on my old diet. Hell, I thought 42 would have been impossible. But by eating an extremely clean and nurturing whole food, plant-based diet without added oils, without added sugars or salt, my body was able to push farther than I ever thought possible. Now, I still get sad sometimes. Most of the time now, I'm sad because I see the damage that people are doing to the environment, to the other animals, and to themselves by their dietary choices. I'm happy to say, however, that I'm no longer depressed. By switching to a 100% compliant, whole food, plant-based diet without added oil, sugar, or salt, I not only cured my irritable bowel syndrome, lost 50 pounds, I overcame recurring, lifelong depression that literally jeopardized my life. It put my life in jeopardy. Now I'm excited to share the power of plants with anyone who wants to listen. I've recently completed a certificate in plant-based nutrition from Cornell University, and I want to continue my journey of health and self-improvement, helping myself and others achieve better health. I know we can all achieve better health outcomes simply by changing what we eat. When we change this, we truly change our lives. Perhaps like me, you'll get the urge to take a real healthy walk in the woods. Perhaps that will turn into a run, and before you know it, you'll be redefining what's possible for you. And it all starts with a seed, the cradle of power of plants. Thank you. Any questions anyone has on anything? I'll try, yeah.
Has anybody looked at, about the depression thing, has anybody looked at brain chemistry and how that might change?
There is, yeah. There's been, I think most of the studies right now have been more cross-sectional. So they look at a group of people and determine, people who eat more plant-based tend to have higher scores on mood indexes. So people tend to be happier.
Have they watched people who change diets?
I'm not sure if there's been any interventional studies on it, but it's promising because there's a new section of science on the connection between the neurology of the brain and the neurology of the digestive system. So your digestive tract has a huge amount of nerves there, and so there's a communication between the flora that lives in your gut and your brain chemistry. So there's a feedback from one to the other, and everyone knows it when, like, you get butterflies in your stomach when you get nervous. That's your brain impacting your stomach, but it actually works the other way as well.
The only reason I ask is there's tools available today to measure that objectively, scientifically, and I feel like people promote plant-based diets sometimes selling a belief system.
Yeah.
I'm not anti-plant-based diet. Like I'm the moderate person.
Yeah.
Who eats bits of meat too, but I think there's some truth in what you're saying. But I do worry, like when talking about breast cancer survivor, when I hear some of those examples.
Yeah.
Because statistically, I think they say around 7% of ailments will fix themselves anyway. I mean, you could open
Sure.
up this tomorrow, call yourself a doctor, and 70% of people walk through the door, if you left them alone, didn't touch them, didn't medicate them,
Yeah.
their bodies will...
There is a certain percentage of people that will cure themselves. I think there's a 70% reduced chance of getting cancer if you follow a completely plant-based diet as opposed to someone who eats more omnivorous.
I worry about this idea of turning, especially cancer, the idea of turning cancer around. I'm extremely skeptical on that.
I would recommend you look up the work of Dr. John McDougall.
But
Yeah.
it's measurable. You can measure that.
It is measurable,
Take
absolutely.
Put them in the lab, measure it, prove it.
Absolutely. And Dr. McDougall has done that. Yeah. He's been studying it since the 80s. Yeah.
I think what you're doing is great, and
Oh, thank you.
I subscribe to all of that, so
Thank you.
thanks.
They actually looked at the China study.
In the China study, absolutely, yeah. So the China study by Dr. Campbell was, they basically indexed various cancer rates throughout China. And unlike in North America, where everyone eats a standard diet, their different villages had widely different diet trends, but also people tend to be born and die in the same place. They weren't very transient, so they were able to link cancer rates with diet very closely. And then it was also tested with in the lab post as well, specifically with like casein.
That to me seems feasible and believable.
Yeah.
I just get super worried when I hear stories about people diagnosed with something terrible and then it heals.
Yeah. Well, so Dr. Ruth Heydrich, she was in an actual medical study. Yeah. So it was being. You can find the journal article on that. Yeah. Yeah. She was been featured in Forks Over Knives, actually, if you've seen that movie. Yeah, so those were in animal studies, the one you're referring to. So it's casein, which is a milk protein. And so they can take two groups of rats. And so if you feed the rats 5% casein protein, they don't get cancer. If you up that to 20%, they get cancer. You drop it back down to 5, the cancer goes away. You bring it back up to 20, and they can literally turn cancer on and off by the amount of the casein animal protein that they're feeding them. So. It is really cool, yeah. Anyone else?
You started to call yourself, like when you started to run,
Yeah.
you said that you would use cancer deprived, protein deprived.
Yes.
I don't know if you're kind of doing quotation marks.
I was, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What can you talk about, like protein and like combining proteins and all that?
So combining proteins is a myth. All the protein you need, you can find in whole plant food sources. The protein thing is a debacle. It is a marketing ploy by people to get you to eat animal products, essentially. It is effectively impossible to eat a protein deficient diet if you're consuming a sufficient number of calories. If you ate nothing but broccoli, you would get more than enough protein to survive.
You don't get your combination of amino acids that you want, right?
Yeah, so as long as you're eating a variety of plant foods, like don't only eat one thing, you're going to be fine. And also your body is able to take specific amino acids and break them down and form them into other amino acids as well. So there's been literally 0 cases of protein deficiency. Yes?
I'd just like you to speak a little bit about food preparation.
Okay.
As somebody who prepares my family's food,
Yep.
it's a long time
It does.
to do that. And I am a plant-based person, but it takes a very long time, and I have a full-time job, a family. Give us some ideas.
Okay. So there's really two strategies I take. So batch-based cooking is a big one. So I will, on Sunday, we'll usually batch our lunches for the week. So we'll make 7 big salads, or we'll make a big thing of soup and divvy it out for the week. For suppers, we'll do like big turkey roasters full of vegetables. And I will do like, say 6 cups of quinoa and a giant roaster of veggies, and then I'll do 2 pounds of beans in the slow cooker, pile it all together, and then each night I will season it differently so that it's not the same thing every night. It's the same food, but it's seasoned differently. So one night I'll have Indian, the next night I'll have Southwestern. So I do that a lot. I also use a lot of frozen vegetables. I find frozen vegetables, they're just as nutritious as fresh vegetables, but it's super easy. They're always in season, so they don't go bad. So they're able to freeze them basically as soon as they pick them. So you're able to get them for an affordable price. And I just stock my freezer with frozen veggies. And if I'm in a hurry, open up vegetables, throw it in a frying pan with a little bit of water, season it as I like. 10 minutes later, I've got a meal. So. Smoothies, a lot of smoothies. I do a lot of smoothies. Some people, smoothies is a hot topic debate. Some people say chew your food, you shouldn't actually blend anything. I'm of the mind that if you're gonna have a smoothie, it should be at least 75% greens and only 25% fruit, just because of the sugar response, like the glucose spike that you would get if you have high fruit smoothies. So.
What was your ratio of cooked to raw food?
I don't really like target 50-50, but I don't target. Like one day it's all raw, the next day it could be mostly cooked. I'm not strict every single day to say I need to have this much every day, or yeah. And oats, lots of oats. I love oatmeal. It's a quick and easy. Yeah.
Just wondering, you mentioned salads.
Yes.
Making them up in advance.
Yeah.
Can you share with me what your all-time favorite no oil salad recipe would be?
My all-time, honestly, mostly nowadays, I just use vinegar. I just use a balsamic vinegar or an apple cider vinegar. If I want something a little fancier, it really is like maybe some water and balsamic vinegar mixed with frozen raspberries, and just blend that together, and it's like a raspberry vinaigrette. It doesn't have to be complicated. Usually, so with salad, you want some sort of fat, helps you absorb fat-soluble nutrients. So you always want some fat source in a salad. So usually that's some seeds, like sunflower seeds or pumpkin seeds. If I'm going to make a salad dressing where I'm using the blender, I'll use some seeds that I usually wouldn't use, like maybe sesame seeds or something like that. Yeah.
I got a comment that sort of connected to what the lady's asking about.
Sure.
For family, like one thing I cook a lot of at home is Indian food, and I find a lot of that's vegetarian, and you can easily make it vegan.
Yeah.
So I think if you try to switch to that kind of diet, it's easier to probably also try and like pick a culture that already doesn't use meat.
Yeah.
And try to find meat substitutes. I think that's what we go wrong as well, trying to substitute it.
Meat substitutes are great to transition, right? If you only know chicken nuggets and you want to transition your family, and so you choose soy nuggets instead, awesome. The end goal should be switching to more unprocessed plant food, but if that's what it takes to get you away from animal products, and honestly, if that's as far as you're going to go, you're going to do better eating soy nuggets than you are going to be eating chicken nuggets. So
that leads me on to my next thought.
Sure.
A lot of talking about vegetables, but fresh veggies are in a short season in Newfoundland.
Yeah.
So it's great while they're in season. You've got maybe some root vegetables at the end of the year.
Yeah.
But the stuff we have here in the stores has traveled for a long time.
It has.
So it's just no nutritional value. It looks okay.
It still has nutritional value. It does decrease over time,
So
but
I wonder why we don't think, well, we should be promoting frozen veg here, canned veg, and like pulses as well.
yes. Yeah. Absolutely lots of legumes. People do not eat enough beans and legumes. Beans and legumes and nuts and seeds are the only foods that have been positively associated with increases in longevity. So the more beans you eat, the more life you end up living, healthy life you end up living. They're so affordable.
You know, you
Right.
can try different cultures' foods, and it's cheap, and it's freezable, and it's easy to feed your family.
Absolutely, yeah. Like lentils are what, 40 cents 100 grams or something like that? Like it doesn't take a lot to, and that's actually one of my go-to quick and easy suppers is I will do, say a cup or two of lentils, a cup or two of quinoa, because they both cook at the same time. So mix that with the appropriate amount of water. I think if it's 1 cup of each, it'll be 2.5 cups of water. Cup of frozen corn and a cup of frozen peas. Mix it with some Indian Garden. It's my own spice that I make, but any curry essentially. Bring it to a boil. Cover, lower, simmer for 15 minutes, boom, you've got supper. So like it's 5 minutes of prep time and 20 minutes later you can eat essentially. So, and yeah, it's Indian, the trouble with doing cultural foods is a lot of different cultures add animal fats in different ways. So like Indian food is really good, but they add a lot of animal fat into their food. So if you avoid that, then you're gonna be okay, so.
As an ultra marathoner, your caloric needs would be pretty high.
Yes.
So, one of the things about veggies definitely is you have to eat a lot more of them to get the calories.
A lot of people don't know that. That the volume of food you eat increases significantly, especially if you're doing extremely strenuous activity. So like I can go on a 5-hour run and burn 2,000 calories. So when I come home, I'm gonna eat a giant bowl of oats and I'm gonna have a big salad. So it's not just the calories I want, like I alluded to Dr. Furman's nutritarian approach. And so he has this thing called a health quotient. And so health to him is you want the highest amount of nutrients per caloric buck. So sure, I'm taking in a calorie, but a calorie isn't a calorie isn't a calorie. You want to make sure that you're getting nutrition along with that as well. So yeah, but yes, if you're like, I could literally not eat enough salad. My stomach would not be big enough to get my calorie needs. So I'd have to eat more legumes, more whole grains, more starches like sweet potatoes to make, those are more calorically dense plant foods to get that bump. When I was running, I would often take dates with me. And so I'm just basically eating, dates are essentially sugar. There's really fiber and sugar in them, right? So I'd eat dates while I was running, and that was my bump in caloric source. And then just a scoop of peanut butter with it, right? So.
Along the same lines, when you're stressing your body to that level, and I guess just in general terms as well, are there any things that you have to, or you had to watch for with regards to getting the proper, vitamins and minerals and stuff that maybe is a little harder to achieve with a purely vegan diet?
Okay, so the only thing that is, there's a few things that potentially are trouble. There's B12. Anyone who's eating a 100% whole food plant-based diet without any animal products needs to take a B12 supplement. Your liver stores enough for about 3 to 5 years, but if you don't have a continued source, the health consequences to that is dire. So you should be taking it. It's water soluble, you can't overdose on it. Everyone should take a B12, it's pretty cheap. Outside of that, we live in a northern latitude, so it's possible that we're not getting enough vitamin D. However, it's recommended that you get your blood level, your serum level tested before you take a vitamin D supplement because it follows a U-shaped curve. So you can get too little and you can get too much, and you want to be in that sweet spot. So you want to get your blood tested before you take that one. Outside of that, you should be able to get all the vitamins and nutrients that you need from plant-based sources.
Is that hard to achieve without consciously making sure that there's a balance
No.
of different types of plant-based foods?
So with vegetables, your priority should be greens, dark leafy greens, and with fruits, your priority should be berries. So when you actually don't get healthier or stronger by exercising, exercising is actually quite bad for you. It's the healing from exercising that's the good part. So when you go for a 5-hour run, you're putting a lot of oxidative stress on your body. And so what that means is there's a lot of free radicals that get oxidized. So what you want is a diet that's high in antioxidants, which neutralizes those free radicals. So eating lots of berries and seeds and stuff like that would give those antioxidants that would help to fight those. Plus, plant-based foods are typically a low inflammation food, so it keeps the level of inflammation in your body low to begin with, so you recover quicker. You get less pain in your joints. Your body's just able to bounce back and heal at much quicker rates. So, yeah, no problem.
Can I add to your answer?
Sure.
On top of that, animal products tend to be mononutrient products, not single, just much more limited than a plant-based product. So if you're eating plant-based fully, you're getting a much more diverse range of nutrients coming in. The idea that eliminating animal products would cause less nutrients doesn't logically follow.
Yeah, and honestly, like when I was eating a standard diet, the variety of my diet was significantly limited. Like you would have pasta with chicken and some pasta sauce 3 nights a week, and then you would have a steak with some potato one other night, right? Like you would do the same things over and over. Now it's like the amount of different types of fruits and vegetables I consume, it's huge compared to what it was before. Like I've had fruits that I'd never heard of before. So it's the variety of nutrients you're getting tends to go up. But that being said, like I've interviewed someone who, the episode should come out in September or October here. He ate nothing but potatoes for an entire year. Just potatoes. And he lost a whole bunch of weight and got healthy just by eating potatoes. So your body is able to take the food that it gives and basically provide health as long as it doesn't have negative things in it, which is what animal products typically have. It's like high cholesterol, saturated fat, toxins, parasites. There can be hormones, right? It's coming from an animal. It has an androgenous system just like we do. There's hormones naturally there, even if it's like non-hormones had it. Well, there's still going to be, I'm saying it wrong, hormones in meat, right? So, yes.
Did you cut out caffeine?
I still drink caffeine. Yeah. I've cut out coffee. I'll still now I'm drinking coffee because I'm down here, I'm on vacation or whatever. But usually, like at home, I don't buy coffee anymore. So at home, I'll drink green tea. It's the most healthful beverage you can have outside of water, essentially. If there's a video telling me that hibiscus tea is the best, I'll drink hibiscus tea for a while, but then I'll switch back. But I'll still have like orange pekoe tea sometimes as well. I avoid red light foods. So foods are either green light, good for you, yellow light, eat with caution, or red light, don't touch that stuff. And so I try to follow that approach. Yeah. Yes?
So you mentioned pollution. I totally get why animal production pollutes. I think part of that is because it's intense, and it's intense because it's cheap. We've got a system that promotes like eating lots of meat cheaply, as opposed to small amounts of high quality meat. But we're kind of stuck with that now. But if we woke up tomorrow and everybody was suddenly converted to a plant-based diet, how do we grow large amounts of the stuff that we need for that diet? Like everything that the field's being treated with are running off right now into rivers and lakes.
It is, yeah.
Water, and you can't be completely organic.
You could over a big enough time frame, absolutely. It would take time. Like there's an issue now where they used arsenic-based pesticides on cotton fields back in the day, and so now rice has high levels of arsenic because it's good at.
Today is filling our rivers.
Yeah, but so animal products are extremely inefficient. It takes so much grain to feed a cow, right? So if you were to convert that into a field that's growing fruits and vegetables, it's extremely more productive than it is having grazing animals. So yes, if you were to wake up tomorrow and no one chose to eat meat, we would have a huge problem. We slaughter billions and I think there's 1 trillion chickens slaughtered every single year in the US, right? So if all of a sudden there was no demand for that product, something is going to go sideways. But luckily, it's not going to transition. It'll be more gradual, and we will adapt, essentially. People will stop breeding animals as rapidly as they do, and chances are there are going to be still animal farms that will scale back, because hopefully the demand for commercial farming will be decreasing over time. So, but you're not going to see that overnight switch, which will cause major problems.
There was a story today about a farm, I think it was in the UK, that was like a U-pick.
Yeah.
And I think oversprayed this U-pick spray stuff.
Yeah.
Probably do it here, I'd imagine too, because the strawberries are very big. So I'd imagine they do it at Leicester's as well. They spray stuff to make the stuff bigger and look better.
Yeah.
And apparently they hadn't washed the stuff up. It makes people vomit. So I mean, that's just the stuff, that's not ending up in the rivers and the streams.
Yeah. It polluting our waterways is a major issue. Like, there are dead zones in the US, in their rivers, that flow out into the Gulf of Mexico just for that, where it's rain runoff essentially from farms. Ideally, you want to eat as much organic foods as you possibly can afford. But that being said, you're better off eating plant-based foods, even if they're covered in pesticides, than you are eating animal products for health and longevity. I think Harvard did a study where it's like, if people switch to more plant-based food, the pesticides in conventional produce would cause an extra 160,000 deaths or something like that per year. But the savings from lifestyle diseases would be like in the millions. So it's definitely net positive to eat more fruits and vegetables. Any step you can take to doing that is going to be health positive, essentially. So.
Do you have any statistics in terms of longevity between plant-based diets and use your quotation, normal food?
Or omnivore, standard American fare. I don't know them off the top of my head. I know that there is a longevity improvement by eating more plant-based diets, but what's more important than that, it's not the number of years you live, it's the number of quality of life years you get. So even if you don't live an extra 5 years, let's say, chances are you're not going to be debilitated with heart disease, diabetes, on 12 medications a year. You're going to actually feel better for longer on a plant-based diet. Because the number one cause of our major diseases like cancer and heart disease are lifestyle. So anything that can improve your lifestyle is going to improve your quality of life for longer. Does that help?
Yeah, I don't think I agree with you on the heart disease, because the major cause of heart disease, as I understand it, is actually genetic.
That's absolutely not true. The number one cause of the only causation factor that is critical is an elevated level of cholesterol. Yeah. They've been doing studies since the 70s that show that switching to a plant-based diet can reverse heart disease in weeks. In fact, I mentioned nutritionfacts.org. So Dr. Greger started nutritionfacts.org because of his grandma. So when he was a kid, his grandma had heart surgery several times. And they basically got to the point where there was too much scar tissue. They said, there's nothing more we can do for you. Go home to die. And so at the time, I think it was Dean Ornish was doing a study, I think it was in the 70s, and they wheeled her into his study group, and they put her on a plant-based diet. And within 2 weeks, not only was she out of that wheelchair, she was walking 10 kilometers a day. In just 2 weeks by changing what she ate. It's incredible when you see the angiograms of the capacity changes in the arteries just by switching what you eat. Yeah, it's genetics. Some people are predisposed for having higher cholesterol levels than others. That is true, but by changing your diet, everyone, regardless of what your base level is, your blood cholesterol levels will decrease if you eat a plant-based diet. Yeah. Anyone else?
You mentioned about the IBS, I just wanted to ask.
IBS, yes.
Yeah, and so, of course, you're eating a lot of beans and pulses, and how's all that going?
So 97% of people are deficient in fiber. So most people are not eating enough fiber, and that really doesn't add bulk to the stool. Also, 75 or over 50% of stool is actually bacteria by weight. And so bacteria feeds off of fiber. So if you're not eating enough fiber, they're not reproducing, and so they eat fiber and produce chemicals that are beneficial for your intestinal tract. One of them is butyrate, which basically helps heal the intestinal lining, as well as like producing nitric oxide, which allows blood vessels to open and close, like it makes them more elastic. Gas can be an issue initially. If you don't eat a lot of fiber, it's recommended that you add, I think, no more than 1 or 2 grams a week. So ideally is you add it to build up, because if you don't have those bacteria, then you're going to get gas as you digest it. But as you feed those bacteria, more of them will be produced, and then you'll have less issues. So over the long run, you're okay. You may have some transition issues. Anyone else? Yeah.
I don't eat fish myself. I was just wondering what your thoughts on fish were.
Did you see the video? Were you here for the video? Yeah, that was from a fish. So the tongue worm comes from contaminated fish. And so you can technically, if you freeze fish below minus 18 degrees, you can kill those parasites, but oftentimes it's not frozen below that level. And then you've also got to cook it for some amount of time in order. But fish is a common form of contamination. But in addition to that, there's lots of bioaccumulation. So we were talking about runoff from fields. That all goes into the ocean. And so that contaminates plankton, which are eaten by bigger fish, which are eaten by bigger fish. And so it bioaccumulates up the food chain. So fish are often, they've got like like heavy metals like mercury and dioxins. There's lots of toxins in fish. They're quite contaminated. Yeah. Mercury, yeah. So yeah, fish I would consider one of the worst things for you. I wouldn't eat any fish.
Very good.
Yeah?
Chadwick.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate it so much.
Oh, no problem.
From the organizers.
Oh, thank you very much.
That's 2017 and everybody here.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. So I'll be at my booth if anyone has more questions.